Good evening and welcome to African Voices platform, your community radio station for Sheffield and surrounding areas. Today, we're diving into one of the most pressing issues facing communities across the United Kingdom, housing and home ownership. Joining us is Laura Bannister, Senior Campaign Researcher at the Centre for Progressive Change. Laura is leading a nationwide listening campaign to uncover the challenges people face when trying to buy a home. She's particularly keen to hear from Black, African, and other minoritized communities who often face unique and systemic barriers in the housing market. Good evening, Laura, and welcome to African Voices platform. Thank you so much.
Hi, Chiwe. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So, Laura, today we'll be exploring why homeownership remains a distant dream for many and what changes people want to see. Then we're going to be asking people how they can share their voice in shaping a targeted policy campaign that's launching next year that you are leading on. But before we get into the detail of it, could you start by explaining the goals and the scope of the listening campaign on progressive homeownership? What inspired the initiative?
So we noticed that there's huge inequalities in terms of who owns homes in the UK. So there's we tend to think that there's about the right number of people own homes. It's close to 2/3 of people. But in fact, when you look at the statistics, you see that in fact that's only really true for white British people and for a few other ethnic groups. But for a lot of the rest of the population, there's home ownership rates are actually well below 50%. And for some communities, particularly for Black African communities, the rate of home ownership is only 20%. So it's very clear that people are facing massive barriers. It's increasingly difficult for people to buy homes, but it's much more difficult for some than for others. We want to find out what the problems are and then build a campaign to change that.
Wow, that's quite stark. What specific barriers have you identified so far that prevent people, especially those with low income, middle incomes, from owning homes then in that case so far?
There's a huge amount of barriers. I think some of the biggest things that people talk about are that getting together the deposit is very difficult because essentially the problem is that houses are so expensive. And so, there's winners and losers in this system. The winners are people that already own homes that maybe bought them years ago and have seen the values go up and up and up. The people losing out are people who didn't manage to get into home ownership at that earlier point, and they're seeing their rents go up and up, but of course they're paying that to somebody else, a landlord, and then it's getting more and more out of reach to be able to own a home. So people have to, when you're getting a mortgage, you have to pay a chunk of the value of the home in one go at the start. And of course, the higher the value of the home, the more you have to pay. And then if it's difficult to save up those amounts when you're paying such high rents as well. So definitely that's one of the big barriers, but there's lots of others. And really what we're wanting to do at the moment is talk to people and talk to communities that are affected by this and find out, what do the barriers look like from your perspective?
Right. Wow, I can't imagine, apart from being a minoritized person, I can't imagine being a young person trying to access the market now from what you're saying. But there's something quite significant that you mentioned. I think you said only a fifth of Black African people in the UK manage to buy homes compared to 2/3 of white British people. That sounds systemic. What are the root causes of that disparity, do you think?
I think, well, a lot of it is to do with whether your parents owned a home in the UK. So I think there's intergenerational dynamics going on. So if you're a part of an established community and your parents owned a home and perhaps their parents owned a home, you're much more likely to be able to own. I was just looking at these numbers today. I think so. I'm sorry if I get some of them wrong, but it was looking at the age group of people who are aged 25 to 39 now. So younger people who are perhaps in the age group we might traditionally think would be buying. If your parents owned a home, you used to have a 60% chance of being able to buy one yourself, or a 60% chance of being a homeowner now. That's fallen to a 51% chance. If your parents didn't own a home, originally in 2009, your chance of owning was 40%, and that's fallen to 22%. So it's really crashed.
That's you're now crazy.
Yeah. Wow. So if your parents owned a home, you're twice as likely as somebody whose parents didn't to now own a home yourself. So I think a lot of this is intergenerational. It's to do with, you know, the inequalities getting wider and wider as time goes on, because, you know, wealth leads to more wealth, and a lack of wealth leads to a lack of wealth. And of course, that reflects the wider issues in society that cause different groups to have different incomes and wealth levels. And there's you know, racism is going to probably play a part in that.
Right. Yeah. Oh goodness, that is quite a remarkable difference. So I'm wondering though, speaking more about your actual campaign that's coming up, what insights are you hoping to gather from minoritized communities, and how will these insights shape the policy campaign next year?
We're hoping to find out what people feel the problem is, because you can't solve a problem until you know what it is. We're really interested to understand how people feel race and racism, perhaps xenophobia and migration controls, how these different issues are intersecting. It would be good to understand what people would like to happen. You know, we want this campaign to be something that that people can get excited about. We want it to be something that really would make a difference to people if we can get it passed. And so it's important to understand how everybody understands this problem and the solutions that they want to see, because that's what we want to fight for.
Okay, great. Then the housing survey itself, how is that structured, and what types of questions are you asking participants?
So the survey is really simple. We have an online survey. It's just like a Google form. It takes 5 minutes to complete. And it's really two main questions. Firstly, it asks, what do you think the barriers are to owning a home? And secondly, it asks, what do you think should be done about it? And we've got some tick boxes to answer, and there's also some free text so you can type in your answers. We also ask a few more questions to understand a bit about you as an individual. So about whether you own a home already, and what kind of home you live in, where you live, and your ethnicity, just so we can understand how different groups are affected by this crisis.
Great. So let's you and I just have a conversation, because I like that you're using storytelling, because you I think there's a bit of an emphasis in the group meeting pack, as well as the guide, I think, that emphasizes personal stories. So let's talk about storytelling. Why is that a powerful tool in addressing housing issues?
I think it's vital for people to understand how this is affecting people on the ground. And when we think about who's going to be making these changes, we're talking to parliamentarians, to MPs, to people in government. They are often people who are relatively well paid. Many of them are white. They're not seeing the problem in the same way that people in different situations are seeing it. So they need to hear what it looks like from different perspectives. And it's so much more powerful to hear it in the words and in the voices, and from people who are affected most. And people's experiences of housing and the housing system can be really so different. You know, some people are living in big houses and seeing their wealth, you know, go up and up and up year on year. The housing system is working brilliantly for them. They're going to have a very different story to tell than somebody who is living, perhaps they're in private rented housing where they're paying rent to a landlord. Their rent can go up anytime. They can be kicked out of the house anytime. They may be being forced to move to different areas to find places they can afford. You know, there's really different challenges, and people just don't see it if they don't hear the stories.
Yeah, and the precarity of it, I guess, is something that we can't conceptualize just by reading about it. But if we hear people's voices firsthand, I guess that's how policy actually is often formed, policy that actually has an impact. It's the stories that people tell, and then that becomes what helps us form policy. I was wondering too, Laura, what role do you envision community groups specifically and organizations playing in this listening campaign? What would you like?
So we would really like to talk to people. Anyone who's willing to talk to me, I'm interested in talking to them. So there's different ways people can input into this. They can complete the survey, which I've already mentioned. That's really simple, and we can share the link. We also have a poster that you can put up which links to that. So that's a great way of getting people involved. But even more importantly, we would really like people to speak to me one-to-one, or to have a group meeting, either with me or leading it yourself, and then letting me know what was discussed, because it's those conversations and that real experience and in people's own words that is so powerful.
Okay. In that case, how can they, whether individuals, organizations, help with convening these meetings or facilitating interviews for the campaign? You may or may not, I'm not sure. I think I might have seen a resource that you sent me, but could you tell people more about that approach? How can they do that?
Yeah, so we have like a little guide to running a group meeting. We usually suggest that you get together 5 to 10 people. It could be in your house or in a cafe or a community space. Feel free to share food, make it a party. And then just sit down and have a chat where people take it in turns to answer the key question, which is what are the main barriers that you see in home ownership? Or like what's stopping you, what's making it difficult? And for you and for the people that you know. And then we ask you to either write that down, or you could record the meeting and then send it through to me. And yeah, I can please share my email address in the info with this, or I can tell you it's laura.bannister@centreforprogressivechange.org. So yeah, please feel free to get in touch.
And that's Bannister with 2 N's.
Bannister with 2 N's. Yeah.
Bannister with 2 N's. That's great. So there's an opportunity for people to participate in this. But one question that our listeners and our viewers will be asking that is quite significant is, how do you plan to ensure that the voices of minoritized communities are amplified in this campaign and not overlooked in the final policy recommendations?
I think, well, for a start, it's vital that people come forward and that we get those voices included. We want to make sure that we're connecting with people as individually and directly as possible, so that excuse me, that you can walk with us through this campaign. So this listening process is just the first step in what's going to be a campaign over several years. We're really keen to build relationships with people now and with communities now that we can then walk through the campaign together, sharing power, sharing knowledge and understanding, and use that to make the change happen.
Great. And also the in the sharing power conversation you've just brought up, I think the meeting pack also encourages communities to identify new leaders who can take action. Am I right?
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. If this is something that people feel really passionate about, if anybody listening feels like passionate about this and would like to get involved, we're 100% looking to find those champions within the community that can really take this forward and work with us the whole way. So yeah, please do get in touch if that sounds like you.
All right, that's brilliant. Now you tell me more. What would you like people to know about this particular campaign and where your heart is with it?
I think the most important thing that I want to say is, if you feel like home ownership is something that's out of reach for you, this campaign is for you, and this conversation is for you. I think we have come to understand home ownership as something in the UK that's something that white middle class people do, and that people who don't see themselves as fitting in that category feel like it's not for them. It's not a conversation that they would need to be involved with. I want to say to people, like, please step up and make your voices heard in this. We want to hear from you, because home ownership is an issue that divides communities. If people that own homes can end up building up large amounts of wealth, people that don't own homes don't have that opportunity, and in fact they end up paying rent to landlords, effectively buying houses for landlords, often white, who are often going to be white people. It's a way of continuing to divide society by having this difference, and we need to make sure that there's much more equal opportunities for everybody in this space. So yeah, please get involved. We think this is really important for building wider equality, and please do get involved and talk to us and share your views.
That's wonderful. And this has started right now, right? So I mean, the contacting you is right from now. As soon as people listen to this and they feel compelled, this is the time to do it.
Brilliant. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We've started this listening campaign. It's rolling. We're hoping to bring in most contributions by the end of January, but we'd still love to talk to people after that point and for several years, while we're running this. So please get in touch anytime, but from now, yes, definitely.
Okay. And can they also go on your website to see more about this? What is the website?
Yeah, the website is centreforprogressivechange.org. You can go on our website. You will find there is currently no page on housing on there. That is because we're having trouble with the people who built the website, and we haven't got access to put a page on. But we are very much running this campaign, and the website will be updated when we can manage to do so. So please, yeah, apologies for that tech issue, but please do get in touch, and you'll find me on there, and our contact details too.
Okay, that's brilliant. And we'll be including all of Laura's details for you to reach out on the lower third if you're watching on TV. If you're listening, we'll be putting this on the website as well. So thank you so much for tuning into African Voices platform. My name is Chira Chahana, and I've been speaking to Laura Bannister.